In a few days from now, my profile will be coming up on its 2 years of profile age, along with 6,400 hours of playtime. Admittedly, this is around like 9 hours of playtime a day for around 730 days, but I swear I have a good reasoning behind this. The main goal for today's video is to pretty much go over my profile, talking about things like how I spend my time and what limits my profile can reach. So if you are a levels grinder and eventually want to hit the max level and a max profile, you'll be able to see through my shoes of what a profile like mine looks like. Before going any farther into the video, I do want to ask you guys to subscribe to our channel. We are ever so slightly coming up on our goal of 25k, and when we do hit 25k, we'll release our own texture pack. This is the pack that me and Vid have been using for the past few weeks and the one I'll be using in this video. So hey, if you do want access to it, all we ask is you subscribe. Without wasting any more of your time, let's get into the video. The first thing out of many is I want to talk about Skyblock levels. A common question that a lot of people have is what is the theoretical max Skyblock level? Obviously you could go into the menu and in this menu you could add it all up, but that will take a lot of time and some of the things are inaccurate. For example, you can't actually max out the visitors served XP reward. So for the people that actually care, the max level is 462.08. Now the sad part is no one's actually able to reach this milestone, and that's fully thanks to the chocolate factory. Me myself, I have everything maxed, but if you look inside the menu, I'm missing 90 XP from Hoppity's Hunt, which going into the menu actually looking at it, 40 of that comes from getting mythic rabbits and another 50 comes from getting divine rabbits. Now I think people have done the math in saying that getting all these divine and mythic rabbits takes somewhere around multiple years to get. And obviously this update's only been out for a few months, so that's pretty much not going to happen for a while. Taking a closer look into the chocolate factory, I'm actually able to look at my total rabbits, and as you see, from the eggs alone, I've caught just above 3,200 rabbits. All these rabbits I've found throughout the course of the like 4 months the update's been out, and I have yet to find a divine, so unless they change something about the chocolate factory, it's a good chance you'll see no one at this max limit for probably years to come. Another thing I should mention is also net worth. Now, me myself, I don't have the highest net worth, only being around 130 billion, which, don't get me wrong, is a lot of coins, but in comparison to the higher net worths, it's not that much, leaving me just around 130th on the net worth leaderboard. Though, once you get into the endgame of Skyblock, net worth really doesn't matter. Most net worth nowadays, for anyone, I would say in the top 100 Skyblock levels, really just comes in the form of pet skins. And if you put 2 and 2 together, it's pretty obvious that I really don't have any pet skins, or in general just fire sales at all. As you can see in some of my ender chest pages, I do have a small bit of skins that do sum up to around 40 billion coins, including some I have in my ender chest. But the main idea behind all this is that realistically, I'll never actually sell these skins, as I don't need the money and they'll just keep going up eventually years down the line. Now another thing as well about the net worth bot is it doesn't include things like bits and of course the things like minions and stuff in chests, so it's not always going to be fully accurate, but just keep in mind that anyone who's pretty much endgame has all the money they need, and anything past I would say 100 million net worth is purely just in cosmetics and useless items. A big question that I get when I do bring up my playtime to people is where I actually spend all that time on Skyblock. As you can see in chat, I have just around 6,400 hours of playtime, and I could actually show you where all this time went into. I'll make this quick as there are a lot of islands, so from the bottom we have things like Dark Auction, Gold Mine, Mine Shafts, the Farming Island, and Deep Caverns. All these islands pretty much have no playtime, and the playtime that I do have in them mainly consists about Bestiary, and as well as the Dark Auction, which I go to for things like when I was going for my Seal of the Family, and things like Scorpius. Looking at these two pieces of paper on the left, we have Instanced and Kudra, which are the same thing. The majority of the time in Instance is time that I actually spent playing Kudra, and then the 20 hours here mostly consisted of doing Bestiary as well as a little Kudra. Now I don't have any like footage or anything from the time that I spent in Kudra, but one thing I could tell you is it made me a ton of money and was really fun. For example, in these chests over here, I still have a lot of things like different attribute shards that I have yet to sell and probably will just keep for the foraging update, if they're useful. Moving on in the middle row, we have some pretty self-explanatory things for why they have a lot of playtime, like Jerry's Workshop, the Rift, Spider's Den, the End, and the Park. Well, besides the Rift, these islands are all islands I spent on doing things like Slayer as well as mainly Bestiary. And when you consider that I did a lot of the bestiaries a little bit inefficient, as well as doing them before some of them got nerfed, there's a reason for the high playtime there. Something that I'm a little embarrassed about is the Dungeon Hub playtime I have here. Now, mentally, I cannot physically remember me spending 150 hours in the dungeon hub, but apparently I did, which for some quick maths is around 6 days of playtime, which is really embarrassing. Could I have spent this time somewhere else while waiting for dungeon queues? Yes, but pretty evidently that I didn't. Moving up to the top row, we have the two mining islands being Dwarven Mines and Crystal Hollows. Here I could cry about the 900 hours I spent on these islands doing things that ended up just getting nerfed. In context, if you aren't too familiar with the alpha server, two of the biggest nerfs that they ended up doing is changing a bestiary as well as a gold milestone. Just how I showed Zealots got nerfed from 100k to 25k a few seconds ago, they did the same thing with Ghosts, taking them from 250k to 100k. Now Ghosts, at the end of the day, I only spent around 30 extra hours grinding the 150k now that I'll have overflow, but the same cannot be said about my gold collection. Now, I know a lot of people are at a billion and, well, I'm not, but the main idea is that I've been doing gold on and off since I hit max XP a few months back, and since then I've done around 600 million gold collection, which, knowing my bad rates, is probably around 100 hours, maybe more. Now, I don't want to make this a ranting video, but I am honestly pretty mad about that change, though nothing will probably change with this video, but all I'm saying is if you're making gold easier on alpha to obtain, why would you change the collection lowered from a billion for max G-Drag to 100 million? For a little context, if you look at the Golden Dragon, one of its perks will give you 10 strength and 2 magic find per digit in your gold collection. In parentheses, it has a max of 1 billion collection, but this cannot be said same on the alpha server. On the alpha network, they changed it to 100 million cap, and for a few hundred players that have over 100 million gold collection, this is kind of a depressing update. Anyway, with that out of the way, we'll continue looking at playtime. Here, we have the hub and the private island, which I'll group together as a lot of these hours are AFK. I would say out of the 1.5 thousand hours between the two, I would say 1,000 hours are pure AFK. The hub, to some credit, a lot of the hours are legitimate through things like Slayer and Diana, but with things like the private island, I would realistically say I've spent no longer than 10 hours of actual playtime on here. Furthering on, we have dungeons, which in the 800 hours mostly contributes to my class average grind that I did years back, and some more recent playtime came from just me fucking around, doing runs on and off. Finally, the highest two, we have the Crimson Isle with just under 1,000 hours playtime. A majority of this playtime contributes to things like Blaze Slayer and trophy fishing, as well as getting the nether stars needed for me to run these Kruger runs. But something I can say for sure is 1,000 hours that I spent on the Crimson Isle honestly were probably the best 1,000 hours I've ever played on Skyblock. And finally, the biggest playtime sink of them all, we have Garden sitting at just over 1,300 hours. Granted, some of this is AFK when I just went AFK doing visitors or something, but most of this time was spent doing crop milestones and pests, things that actually do take a ton of time even today. But when I did max out Garden, I did not do it during the most efficient time and probably spent close to 800 hours on the milestones alone. Now, I'm not going to go and bash the Garden update as I don't find it to be the worst update ever, but I do think it is pretty sad that the number one most playtime I have in this game sits on the Garden, which was pretty much fully AFK, as I was just easily able to watch another show and completely zone out of Skyblock. With that all out of the way, that's pretty much all the stuff that you can't fully see on things like Skycrypt that I felt like it's necessary to go over in this video. If you do want to see some smaller things like maybe what armor I have and my magical power, you could go over to my Skycrypt, which I will leave in the description below for easy access. Now, the part that I think a lot of people are more interested in is what limits can I actually push my profile to. Now, the main idea behind this is to go over things that you guys might have questions about, some things like what are the max fortunes and what magic find you could get to. And that's what the rest of the video will be dedicated to pretty much. The first thing I want to go over, which I just mentioned, is magic find. Before going farther into this, I do want to quickly say this is not the theoretical max magic find, and the main thing holding me back from that is Bobbin Time. Now I'm sure a lot of you know, but the enchant Bobbin Time will increase your stats by 8% once maxed out. Now it increases stats like sea creature chance, fishing speed, but the main thing is magic find here. In comparison to Legion, when you look at it and when it's maxed out, it'll only increase player stats by 7%. Which, assuming you have this applied to all 4 pieces of your armor set, is a 28% with full Legion to a 32% increase with full Bobbin Time. Now, in this case, I am saying that Bob and Time is pretty useless, as there are a lot of cases like, let's say, Blaze Slayer, where you won't have people with their fishing rod out if they were to give you Magic Find. Rather, you would just be doing Blaze Slayer with other people, which Legion would be a lot more effective. Though, with that all out of the way, let's get to maxing our Magic Find. To make this easier, and in case if you want to do this on your own, I'll be showing every stat that I have to give me extra Magic Find. First of all, to go over some basic ones, we're going to look in the stat breakdown and look at Magic Find. Some of the ones that every player should have is first of all from the booster cookie giving 15, a total of 88, and this fully comes from the God Pot. 5 Magic Find purely from the community shop. This is player dependent, but if you have every single pet in the game, you should be getting 11 from Pet Score. I'm getting 2 from my Necron's Ladder and the Sentry Cake, another 2 Magic Find from a Balloon Hat and the Pulse Ring, and finally 26 Magic Find coming from a total of 52 Enriched Talisman. This alone is giving me 149 Magic Find, but we can make that a lot more. Firstly, we're going to go over to the bazaar and buy ourselves a Scorched Power Crystal. This, for whatever reason, I don't have active, but putting this in, I'll get an extra 6 Magic Find. Next up, let's quickly go over equipment. Admittedly, I don't have this maxed, but for first of all, I have my Rift Necklace, which gives me 7, and I have 3 pieces of Molten Equipment, which all adds up to 10 Magic Find here. Because of the upcoming Forging update, I have no reason to really max this out, but do keep in mind that I'm missing 5 Magic Find from this. Next up, obviously, the pet of choice will be the Golden Dragon with the Minos Relic on it. This, paired up with the Daedalus Axe, will give me a ton of Magic Find. As we can look back into the stats breakdown, we can see that the Golden Dragon on its own is giving me 37 Magic Find. With the addition of Chimera 5 on the Daedalus Axe and the Divine Gift 3, I'm getting 43 Magic Find. And thanks to the Daedalus Axe perk alone, doubling pet stats, I'm getting another 37 Magic Find. And finally, the last thing I could do is equip some armor, which in this case will be my 3/4 Crimson with Magic Find 10 on it, and my Clover Helmet, which doesn't give direct Magic Find, but gives me an increase of 5% Magic Find total for a 5% decrease of all other stats. On my island with no other buffs, I could look into my menu and I'm getting just over 333 Magic Find. But there are a few things to increase that. First of all is Bestiary. Besides the Garden Bestiary, of course, every mob will give extra Magic Find based on your Bestiary tier. For example, if we go into mythological creatures, I'm getting an extra 70 Magic Find from Inquisitors, just for the fact that I have the Bestiary maxed out. Now, this does vary mob to mob. For example, cows are only giving me 10 Magic Find, so that's the reason why it won't show up directly in the Skyblock profile. But because of the way Bestiary works, the highest thing that I could get Magic Find on here is Ghosts. Ghosts cap out at a tier of 25, and once max give you an extra 100 Magic Find. Oh yeah, something that I forgot to mention earlier is again the G-Drag buff, being Shiny Scales. We talked about this before, and with every buff, the 2 Magic Find turns into around 10 Magic Find. So though I don't have the extra 10 Magic Find right now, once the mining revamp comes around, I will have that. As they aren't actually changing any stats, they're just changing the requirement to get the max amount of stats from the perk. And as we mentioned before, Legion is the final thing that we have to look after when talking about Magic Find. Here again on my private island, I have around 330 Magic Find, but if I go over to a hub lobby, specifically one with over 20 players, I can look back into the menu and now I have over 424 Magic Find. Now obviously it is pretty unlikely that you're in a scenario with 20 other people around you for Magic Find, so in a better representation I'm gonna quickly use my ult. As you can see, if I bring my ult closer to myself, I can look back in the menu and now I'll be at 337 Magic Find. And as I run away on my ult, I could go ahead and show as I refresh it, I'll be back at 333. Doing some quick math, each player around me gives 4.48 Magic Find. So in something like a Diana party, when you have 5 people around you, that would give myself a 22.4 Magic Find buff. As a quick point in demonstration, I'm gonna go quickly kill a few ghosts to see what type of Magic Find I could get on kill. And as you see with that drop right there, I'm getting 472 Magic Find. And something I forgot to mention earlier is with the Grandma Wolf, I'm getting an extra 9 Magic Find, which is a lot more than that when you consider all the other buffs that I have. Though the most Magic Find probably won't come out of Ghosts and probably from the mythological event. Now to my best memory, I think I had around 480 Magic Find getting a Chimera book, but I do know that people like 15H have gotten just over 500 Magic Find on a kill. which currently is the most realistic magic find you'll probably get while killing something. Now, there are two other stats that I think people would be pretty interested in seeing what a fully maxed setup would look like, and that would be both the mining and farming fortune. And to start off, we'll talk about farming fortune, as it's pretty simple. The first thing we're going to do is put on our armor, being 3/4 Fermento and then Rancher boots. These all being with fully perfect gemstones. Now, I do understand the argument that wearing Fermento boots might be a little better, but two things to counter that. First, I have zero idea where my Fermento boots are, or trust me, I've tried looking. And two, most people will just resort to using Fermento boots due to how easy it is to just set your speed and go. And when you're using things like Fermento boots, you're not always able to get the exact speed you want for every crop. Or I could be lying about that, please let me know in the comments section. But for this demonstration, just because many people use it anyway, I'll just be continuing with Rancher boots. Next, I could put on my full Lotus equipment, which each piece gives me 41 farming fortune. And this is thanks to the 15 fortune I got from getting 10k visitors, as well as having the Green Thumb enchant, as well as having Rooted and all of it being recomped. Something that I do have is the 1 on my Lotus necklace, and this is just for the little bit of strength, and maybe giving me 1 farming fortune for my Mushroom Cow. Speaking of, I'll be able to pull out my Mushroom Cow here with the green bandana. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Mushroom Cow, this pet gives you extra farming fortune depending on the strength that you have. So our goal is to max out as much strength as we could get. Quickly at Elizabeth, I'll go ahead and buy an accessory enrichment swapper to put my accessories over on strength. Next, I'll go over to Maxwell and put myself on Forceful, which gives the most amount of strength out of any Power Stone, as well as put all my tunings on Strength. The final thing I could do is go ahead and put my Beacon on Strength, which gives me an extra 12. And other than that, that's pretty much all you could do for farming fortune. Now, on the garden, I could quickly open my menu without holding anything. I'm getting 1.4 thousand farming fortune, though this isn't fully maxed. First, I'll quickly go ahead and rebuy a Sprayinator, and buy a piece of fine flour, which when sprayed in a plot gives you an extra 20 farming fortune. Next up, I could go to my accessory bag and drink one of these Harvest Harboring potions, just giving me an extra 50 farming fortune. I could go over here and talk to the Pest Hunter, which turning in 40 pests, I'm able to redeem an extra 200 farming fortune. Now, a buff that I am missing that I can't really control is an extra 25 that you get from farming contests. If you have Anita's Ring, you could go ahead and look into your calendar, and any crop with the little orange symbol next to it will give you an extra 25 farming fortune. This, along with personal bests, which I haven't fully tried maxing out, there are a few things that people won't have the exact same amount of farming fortune with. Finally, in this case, I could pull out my potato hoe, which is my best hoe, and when holding it, I could go look into my fortune and see I have 1816 farming fortune. On top of that, if I go into my breakdown menu, I can see that I have an extra 380 specific potato fortune, which if you look below brings me to just under 2200 farming fortune. Again, this will vary crop to crop, as some things like the potato dicer just give less fortune overall. But other than that, that's pretty much the max farming fortune you could get without any one-off buffs. Finally, let's go ahead and talk about mining fortune. Now, at the time of recording this, the update for the mining update might or might not be out, but for the most part, the gear shouldn't change, so you should have a little bit of an understanding on what you'll have. Now, there are a few different things that you can mine in different areas, so to make this pretty simple, I'll be going over my mining fortune in the Glacier tunnels. I'm basing my mining fortune test here as there are a lot of other things that can change your mining fortune in other parts of the game. For example, you'll have a lot less fortune doing something like gold mining, due to you having to wear mineral armor rather than full divans. Speaking of going to my wardrobe, I could quickly put on my full divan setup, which consists of every perfect gemstone. Next, I could go to my backpack and pull out 2 different drills, one being my Divan drill, and second, my Jasper drill. Quickly, just to make this a little more fair, I'll take out the Jade gemstone and put in a Topaz. For those unaware, the reason I'm using 2 drills is for the last part being the Sunnyside Goblin Egg. This gives me an extra 50 fortune on my Divan drill, but another useful omelet is the Blue Cheese Goblin Omelet, adding 1 level to each unlocked perk in the heart of the mountain. For example, as a quick demonstration, I'm getting currently 250 mining fortune from this one perk, but if I hold out the drill and look back, now I'm getting 255. Speaking of Heart of the Mountain, we'll quickly look at my tree. I would not recommend copying this tree as there are a lot of things wrong with it, but the main idea is that I do have all the fortune I need outside of things like, for example, here the Glacier Mineshaft, which is not something I'm currently concerned about. Next up, since we're not in the Crystal Hollows, I could go and pull out my Skycrypt, which gives me an extra 125 mining fortune, as well as an extra 50 mining fortune from the Quick Claw. Finally, the last thing I could go over is equipment, and please do not judge me. The mining equipment I'm using are the Dwarven Hand Warmers, a Titanium Belt, Ancient Cloak, and Titanium Necklace. Now, the reason I said don't make fun of me is the main reason that there are a few better upgrades in this. First of all, the Jade Belt. The only thing that's better about the Jade Belt is the rarity, as you could get it up to Legendary, while this is stuck at Epic, well, in this case Rare, as the recomp only gives 1 fortune. And since I don't mind, it's just a full waste of money. And finally, there's no Devon Pendant in my setup. Again, I don't mind, so having this is just a complete waste of coins. But just keep in mind, I'm not using the best equipment, and I will give you the actual number for if you do have the fully maxed equipment. And finally, the last thing I have to go over is Devon's powder coating. Now, I do have this on my helmet for the time that I did do gold mining before my dreams got brutally shattered, but I do not have it on the bottom 3 pieces. This will just give me an extra 30 fortune, as well as 10 if I applied it on my Devon's pendant, which I don't have. But again, these items are 1, way too expensive, and 2, again, I don't mind, so I genuinely don't think I could afford it all if I went and tried to buy it. Proof of concept, each glossy gemstone goes for around 5.4 million coins, and for each Devon's powder coating and for the equipment you need 32 each, which out of pocket would cost me 850 mil, along with the probably around 2 billion I'd have to spend on the pendant. So just to quickly go over, from the 4 that I'm missing from not having the Jade Belt, 68 fortune from the pendant, and another 40 from the Devon powder coating, I'm missing 112 possible mining fortune. But what fortune do I have? Well, if I look in the menu, I'm just sitting around 2,360. In other words, if I had all the other upgrades, I would be sitting at 2,472 mining fortune, which is an absolute fuck ton, I won't lie. As a little proof of concept, I actually went on the alpha server with all the different changes, and set up a fully maxed out mining setup with all the perks and everything, including things that I missed out on like my pendant here and the Jade Belt. And if you look into the menu, I'm getting 2,045 fortune. So this is a company to buy 360 Dwarven Metal fortune, so take that as you will. And finally, for the final test that I want to do is what is the max damage I could do on this profile. Now there are a lot of things that I could test my damage on, but mainly I'm just going to do the classic test and try to get as much damage as I can on a hub zombie. So let's go through the steps of what I need to do as much damage as possible. And quick disclaimer, no, this is not the max damage, as obviously, for example, I'm missing 15 star Crimson, but there are probably 3 people on the server that actually have that, so this is a more realistic setup. Speaking of, I'm going to be putting on this full Crimson set, along with my Warden helmet over here. For my pet of choice, I'm going to go into my menu and take out this Golden Dragon with Antique Remedies. I'm going to go over to Maxwell and go set my Power Stone to Hurtful, along with all my tunings onto crit damage. My reasoning for both the tunings and then this Power Stone that gives me a lot more crit damage is that we'll be having a lot more strength thanks to the Golden Dragon and Crimson Armor, so our main thing should be focusing on any small stat that gives crit damage rather than strength if given an option. Speaking of, I'll go over here to get another accessory enrichment swapper and put it on crit damage, as well as go back to my island and set my beacon over to crit damage. Next, for my equipment of choice, I decided to go with full Molten with Dominance. I didn't know what else to really choose, and I guess this is really nice as you do get a bit more damage when at full HP. For my sword of choice, I'm going to go with the Dark Claymore. For those that don't know, the Midas sword when fully maxed is around probably 1% better to my knowledge, but that cost 8 billion coins, and I actually don't think a single person on the server is A, using one, or B, has one. This on its own is pretty much all I could do gear wise, but there are a few things for utility I could use. Firstly, a little bit of an oddball, but the Wand of Strength, just giving me an extra 30 strength. Next, a few things I could take out of here are first my Weirder Tuba giving me 40 strength and 10 crit damage, as well as my Plasma Flux giving me 30 strength, 5 crit damage, and 1 crit chance. Now, a few people might be wondering why I'm using this over a Flare, and that's because the Flare doesn't actually give any more damage. It gives a lot of vitality, mana regen, ferocity, etc., but doesn't actually give any stats. Next, I could take out my Sword of Bad Health, which gives me an extra 100 strength on right click. And finally, I could use my Ragnarok Axe, which is pretty much maxed out besides, well, Kim 4. Let me quickly change that. There we go, a little better. This Ragnarok axe is really useful, as using the ability Ragnarok and not taking any damage for 3 seconds, I will gain 1.5 times this weapon's strength for 10 seconds. With everything I have, I currently have just under 500 strength, so that would be around 750 strength. And with all this together, I could quickly place down and use every effect that I have. And to a graveyard zombie, I'm doing 2.5 million damage. Again, let me premise this is not like a max damage in any sense, as I am not using the most efficient setup for killing zombies, of course. But it's just a pretty fun test that many people do when they want to test out their damage. For example, I could put on a different set of equipment, this case being full Vanquished, pull out my Moody Grapple Shot and go over and kidnap a Blaze. Using a Death Ripper Dagger instead, now I'll be doing 3.5 million damage. Another small thing is Crimson Swipes. If I take this Blaze for example, you can see that I did 14.6 million damage. If I grapple this Millennia Aged Blaze, I could quickly hit it once and I'll do 19 million damage. So again, the test in the hub with killing zombies isn't fully like the best way to test combat damage, but it's just a metric that everyone I guess uses for some reason. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. There might be a few other questions or things you might have about my profile or just endgame gameplay in general, and if you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. I'll be sure to answer a lot of them. Though us endgame players don't really get much content, it is pretty fun to use the stuff that we already have, that we've grinded in years prior, to do stuff like this and just have fun, which I think a lot of people don't really look at and just end up bitching about the game. Again, if you did enjoy this video, and as well as the pack that I've been using throughout this whole video, we will be releasing it once we hit 25k subs, and your subscription means a lot more than you'll ever know. Anyway, thank you for watching, and have a good night.